Hello everyone, and welcome to the Photoshop tutorial. My name's Eric, and I'm going to be helping you guys learn the basics of Photoshop. So, here we're going to have to choose an image to start with, and as you can see here, we have this magnificent photo of a man fishing out a fish. It's quite beautiful. So we're going to want to copy that image right here using the right click with the mouse button. Copy that image and move right over to Photoshop. So when you're in Photoshop, you're going to see all these tools, but don't worry, I'm going to explain them in just a little. But first we're going to go to File and New. And since you copy the image, the dimensions will have automatically inputted themselves here, which is one of the best tools in Photoshop I found, especially when making new images. So yeah, we're going to call this fishing out. There we go. And just Control V, or if you're using Mac it's going to be Command V, and boom, we have the beautiful picture right here. Let me just close these other files, don't get in the way. Alright, so here now, since we have the main layer, we're going to get right into it. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to want to introduce to you guys before we get into the meat of Photoshop is the layer tools and transforming. And this is very simple, and I'm just going to come and get an object, really anything. So I'm going to just type a soccer ball into Google. Here we have a great soccer ball, and we copy that image and paste it right back into Photoshop. So here we have it, and with this soccer ball we could see that when you pasted it, it went right on top of the layer rather than being on the same image. So what you're going to want to see is that if I want to move this image and change it and transform it by pressing Command or Control T, it's going to be moving separately from the image. So here you can see you can move the ball all around wherever you want, but the image in the background on the different layer will not be affected. And this is how you can make really complex images with Photoshop, and it's really great because after you get a soccer ball, who knows? So here I showed you that you can do the transform tool, and it's all real great. So now I'm going to want to point your direction to the bottom right corner of the screen where the layers are all actually stored. You can see here, depending on which layer is on top of the other one, it will change who's in the front. So if I want to move the soccer ball below the fish layer, you can see that you wouldn't see it. But if you move it back above, it reappears. And another cool thing with layers is that you can change how see-through and how transparent they are with the tool called Opacity. And it's right there, bottom right screen, and you can just play around with it with this little scrolling menu. And you can just see the soccer ball just got a bit more transparent. It's really good, really helpful. And now we're going to start getting into the transformation tool, which, like I mentioned before very briefly, is that using Command or Control T you can move the ball around and put it wherever you want. So if you want to scale it up, let's say, and keep it even, you're going to want to hold down Shift and click the top right corner. And so what skewing is, it's sort of like changing its perspective. And what you want to do is that you hold the control or command button, and you're going to want to click on the right top corner or any part of the object, and you can just skew the image just like that. And you can see it's sort of like going onto a floor, so if it was like onto a carpet, you could just like skew it outwards, and sort of like it looks like it would be on the floor or something because it's going into the distance, and that's essentially what the skew tool can do. So what I've been thinking about in this Photoshop is sort of going to be an idea where he's going to be pulling a baguette out of water, let's say. And if you saw my other Photoshop tutorial, perhaps, it was also a baguette. What can I say? I'm a fan of baguettes, you know. Alright, so let's go grab one of these very nice baguettes from Google. Already have it searched up as baguette transparent. So we're going to want to copy that image like we usually do. Go right into Photoshop, and again, Command V or Control V, and that should paste the image where you need it to be. And of course, it's a bit too big, so like I said before, scaling it down with Command T. We're gonna scale that down using the Shift command so nothing's out of proportion. And here we have our baguette. And you can see there's this nasty, really not nice black color around it. And this is usually what Photoshop does to transparent things. So we can easily repair that with a simple tool I like to call the magic wand tool, right there in the top left corner. And all you have to do is select it and click in the area or the color that's generally the same and press delete. Because what happens is that it's auto selecting all the colors that are very similar, and it's just considering its transparent background and it was all made black in Photoshop. It's a really easy fix. So you just do that for all the black here and there, and boom, you got the baguette. I only need one baguette, so I'm gonna just remove this one entirely with selecting it with this tool right here, the rectangular Marquette tool, yeah, English, well, French. Besides the point. Alright, so after that, we have our beautiful baguette, and we're gonna want to replace the fish she's holding with this awesome baguette. So what we're going to want to do is first get rid of the soccer ball at the layers, so you can just press the eye tool and it hides layers. Also pretty helpful if you made a terrible layer and need to hide it from the eyes of your friends. Just click right there, that eyeball. Great stuff. Alright, so we're going to want to turn the baguette into the direction where we're going to want it. Again, you're going to go in Transform tool. Didn't say this earlier, but if you hover near the top right corner, not on the square, you can get this rotational axis thing, and the rotation point will rotate around it, and boom, you just have this rotating baguette. Right now we're going to make it look a bit more like he's holding it. So we're going to get it approximately into the shape, and we're going to do a lot of hard work to make this look very, very spicy. So you're just going to play around with it, see how you want it to cover up the fish. And yeah, I'd say this is about right. Nothing too bad, nothing too good, but we will have to Photoshop our way through this. Alright, let's do this. Alright, so let's get into this. So as I mentioned a bit earlier before, again, sorry for referring back to the past, but over here on the right you have the opacity, and you're going to want to lower it on the baguette layer or whatever layer you're trying to cover up something with. And right here we can see what he's actually holding. And we could sort of just prepare to put the baguette in its proper place. So we can sort of see here that his gripping hand isn't really going to fit around the baguette. So what we're going to want to do, maybe bring the opacity back up just so we can see a bit more of it. And we're going to want to use the transform tool. And again, like I said before, we're going to be using the perspective and warping of it. So we're going to want to stretch it out, so it sort of looks a bit more like the fish shape. Just sort of play around with that. Alright, and again, it doesn't really seem like it's fitting too well, but don't worry, we have an even better tool to work with this. So again, you're going to want to press Control T, and right up here beside the check mark and cross mark is this tool, and it's called the Free Transform and Warp modes. So when you click this, you're going to get this interesting grid looking thing. And don't worry, because right now when you click on it, it's going to have this nice warping thing going on. So you could be like, whoa, you can make this into whatever shape you want. And you're not wrong. There's a lot the warp tool can do. You can basically even cover up the fish and make it look exactly like the fish shape. And that's actually what the warp tools are great at. And so that's what we're going to sort of do. So we're going to use the warp tool to make it look like it's more in his hands. So we're just going to squeeze that down. Maybe pull this out a bit more. And you know what? Yeah, just play around with it. We're going to want to cover up a bit more of his body just so we don't have to deal with a lot of repair later down the road. And just covering the fish as best as we can will also help us. Alright, so let's try going back to its full. Yeah, it doesn't look like a perfect baguette, but you know, not every baguette you find in the wild is going to be as good as the ones made at home. You know, wild baguettes, they get crazy. Alright, so right now we can see it's covering it up very nicely. So but we're gonna have to go back to the lower opacity so we can start using the eraser tool. Very helpful. Again, all these tools I'm showing you are gonna help you a lot in Photoshop. So right here, it's gonna be among the selection of tools, and right there is the eraser tool. So we're gonna want to use this. And you might not see the brush, sorry about that, but you will see it erasing for sure because that's its main purpose. And we can just go here and just press on down. I'm going to go to a more hard brush setting. Don't worry about this. We'll get into that a bit later. So right now, as you can see, we're trying to erase the part of the baguette that's in front of his hand because, you know, when you're grabbing something, you're not behind the object you're grabbing, you're actually grabbing it. So we're just gonna have to erase around this object. Maybe lower that opacity again. A bit hard to see. And yeah, just calmly erase around the hand you're trying to get. Just trying to get it perfect so you get a very nice grip on that baguette, you know. Oh, and if you ever do a mistake, Control Z or Command Z usually does the job. In Photoshop, I'm pretty sure I changed it from this, but you have to hold Shift at the same time for a proper Control Z. You probably deal with this. You probably know the command when doing typing and just generally writing essays. So yeah, there it is. Let's bring back the opacity to the high. And you know what? Doesn't look perfect. So I think we do need to warp this area again so it looks more like it's going into his hand, because that's not how you grab anything in real life. It really isn't. So let's go back into that. Oh, and since I made a mistake like this, I'm just going to be Control Z going back to the original one and trying to undo everything I did. So right now the baguette's pretty much before I started erasing. Just gonna do that again. So warp. Oops, wrong layer. Don't want to do that. Right, and I'm just gonna erase it again. See what kind of result we get. Should be better, I hope. Hopefully. Here we erase it. Bring it back up. And you know what? I say it's alright. It looks pretty good. So, yeah, not bad. So right now we're gonna just continue covering up the fish using the warp tools and all that. Then in a bit we're going to get into blending, which will be even more fun. And one quick word is that you can also select the area you want to just warp, so it wouldn't actually affect the rest of the image. So again, using this Marquette tool, and you can just select around where you want to go. Even the Lasso tool, which I didn't introduce yet, but it's right below it, and it's sort of like a free form selector where you can just make whatever shape you want, and it's really good for picking out the areas you need. So right there, probably. Alright, yeah, and we're back just from that quick speeding up. But what you can do here is that you saw how when warping it, it pulls the warp towards it, and it leaves this gap here. But there's this really great tool, and it's called the Spot Healing Brush tool. And what it can essentially do is repair and sort of does the algorithm for what should be there from comparing the patterns and colors it sees. So essentially you can sort of patch it up, and it might not look the best, but if you just keep using it, it doesn't look bad, not at all. It actually looks really fine, and that's what you sort of use the tool for. And then you just patch up the baguette. And good as new. It's like nothing even changed it. And right now, what I'm thinking is that we sort of keep the fishy aesthetic on it, and sort of just make it a bread fish. Sort of sounds interesting. I like that idea. So you know what? We're gonna try pulling that off. Actually, sounds like fun. So what you're gonna want to do is go to the layer we have, and we're gonna want to make these fins. So these fins, they're all different kinds of shapes. So we're gonna want to pick this end of the baguette, or whatever shape you want to deal with, and just paste it. And it goes on its own layer. So every time you use Control V, it's most likely gonna end up on its own layer. I don't know a case where it doesn't. But here we have the shape of another baguette. You can just sort of change its position, flip it horizontally, and then here we can probably just cover up the other fin. Then we just rinse and repeat, and then we'll have all the fins covered. And we're gonna have a magnificent breadfish. Just alright. And keep making more fins. So, you might not have seen what I was doing there very quickly, but I found a really cool way to actually combine these fins rather than covering them up, and it sort of make them look like the baguette color, keeping that fishy aesthetic that was originally there. So what you're going to want to do is go down here, and can't believe I didn't say this earlier, but it's actually create a new layer rather than pasting on top. So when you create a new layer, it's essentially just your own layer you can draw on. So if you have a brush, you can just like color onto it, and it works just like any other layer. You can make whatever you want. That's why Photoshop is also great for paintings and drawings. So now you're going to want to go here, and this usually works differently depending on the color of what image you're working with, and since this fish's fin is mainly like gray and low saturation, we can do color and go right on top of it. So you press I, and it'll select an eyedropper tool, and you just pick the color of the bread where it's most generally going to look like. So like let's say this area, and just left click and go to brush, which is over here on the left screen with the brush tool. B is also the hotkey for it, and just color over it, because color is good for coloring grayscale images, and you can sort of just get the color that you want into it. So there we have that fin covered, and we can just do it for basically all the other fins that sort of stand out. We could even do it for the fish. And again, it might look a bit messy, but this is where you sort of like compromise. You can also cover up and just sort of play around with it. You just keep using these really simple tools, and you can really make cool images in the end. So yeah, just keep moving along with it, and should be good. So now we have an alright result, but the head doesn't yet look like a fish. I think that's going to be the next thing we're going to do after I clean it up just a bit more. OCD. Yeah, just kidding. Alright, and now you might be thinking that I'm sort of just going ahead without you, using these tools you've never seen, but don't worry, I'm not using any tools that you haven't seen. It's all been the same transform. A bit used to my tools in another program I used, but nonetheless, it's looking quite fishy. That does not work, but hey, we're almost there. So now what we're going to want to do is work around with the head, and I think here we're going to use the warp tool again. Just a lot of the same tools, you sort of just want to master them, and it's going to be really great. Let's just check it out, and let's go. And here you could sort of see that the fish's face isn't really apparent when you have the baguette at full opacity. And I think a way I'm going to work around that is sort of by lowering the opacity just at this part of the face, because it really has that fishy feeling there. So I'm just going to go select this part here and use another tool also called the quick selection tool and go to the minus, because we're going to be working on the layer behind it. So we'll want to just select out the fish's head, because the fish's head is the only part we really need. So we're going to want to go like this, sort of just brush around it. Sort of, because this is more in focus, it allows the program to select a bit more around it. Just keep going. That might have been a bit too much. And when it gets to a point where you can sort of just outright do it yourself, you could just go to this selection tool and hold hold Alt and just select the shapes you want to remove, or don't, or just hold. Just don't hold it up. You hold Shift and it lets you add to the shapes, and just keep doing that for the parts you want. And yeah, I think that's going to be all for the fish head. Maybe just small snippets here and there. Just overall what we're going to be going for. So you're going to want to press Control C to copy that part and go on the right layer, of course, because layers matter. Always don't forget, layers matter. So after you're on the right layer, you're going to want to press Control C, copies the image, and we're going to now bring back the baguette and try getting that fish face right into this. So we're going to want to paste it with Control V, drag it on top, and oh, well, it's not going in place. So we do have a tool for that, and it's actually Control Shift V. So it's the same thing as pasting, but it's going to place it in the place you copied from the original image in the software. So you want to press Control Shift and V, and when we drag it up, there's the fish head. It's magnificent. And right now what we're going to want to do is we could use the same idea where we use the color before, but this time let's see if we can play with these layers. So multiply, that works pretty well. It's pretty close to original. Lighten, darken. Oh, that doesn't look good. That's definitely not it. And soft light. You know, I think this is sort of getting the message across. It really does look like the face is on the fish. And yeah, it doesn't look bad. So we're just going to run with this. We're going to have to blend up this area here. And I'm pretty sure, let's see how the blending tool works. Doesn't work too well in this case because there's nothing to blend in with its layer. So we're going to want to use an eraser and go here, and there should be more options rather than just the standard eraser. And right here in the top left, and you're going to want to select a more less hard looking one. So it's sort of like this, and it's called a soft brush, and we're just going to want to go erase around the edge, sort of because of the hard select it had. In the other, when using the select tool, just sort of go nice and softly there. Just sort of like that. And yeah, it's a monster, but it's a beautiful monster. Alright, but before we're done here, there are still a few things I could do to this image to make it a bit more
Hot on spicy meat.
So it's
Yeah,
mainly
boy.
rely on things like modifying the layers and the colors and the curves, and I'll get into what that actually means and right now actually. So I'm not sure how it looks for you guys. I'm just going to reset to essentials. Let's see. The workspace, let's just reset essentials so I know what you guys are working with. Alright, so we can just go here in adjustments, and here we have brightness, contrast, levels, curves, and exposure. We just have a ton of great tools to work with, and maybe you want to lower the saturation, right? So we're going to want to click this layer, and here it makes a correction layer, or just a layer you can work with. So now if you're going to play with the thing on top, it's just going to increase saturation, lower it, and same with darkness. You can sort of just get a lot of things going on. So what we're going to do is, you know what, let's make it a bit more like it's at night. So we're going to want to lower saturation, maybe bring the tones to more blue. Yeah, that's a bit weird, so let's just keep it at 0. We can add another layer on top with some blue colors to give it that effect of night, and just lower that darkness. So right there we have a more dark image, and it's a bit less saturated. And this is the way this works is that you could just put it on top, and if you move it below the layers, they're just ignoring the effect of the correction layer. So you can move it all the way to the bottom under the fish, and the fish itself is no longer desaturated. It's only the original image. And what we're going to want to do is keep it on the top, because there are some other things we can actually do, such as erasing the saturation layer. Or actually it's the reverse, because they work with a white background, so it's as if it's the blank canvas is going to be the saturation effect. But if you color in with black, it's going to remove the effect, and you could see here in the layers that it appears as black, and you can sort of just use that, maybe create some interesting lightings with it. You just have a lot of tools you can work with. Again, just a lot of great tools, and if you erase, it brings back the dark saturation, and you can just sort of just do different effects. So let's say you wanted maybe more light coming from here, and you just give him more shadows on his face, and there you go. Now it's darker. Woo! But yeah, there was a shadow there. Nice, nice. Alright, so what we can do is just go back, Control Z. We're going to want to draw over the fish with our soft brush selected here, so it's not as hard, and just sort of draw with it. And we're just sort of gonna go here. Sort of click around the fish, maybe go a bit closer, just give him like more center lighting, like this. It's gonna get real bright soon. And what we're gonna want to do is go to a layer, make a new layer down here, and use something called color dodge. Again, you're still using the brush, and it intensifies the colors a lot. I'm not sure about the math, but you can sort of use it for like very intense glowing, and it's really cool. It's just make things shine. This is basically his new weapon. It's the 1,000 degrees baguette fish. Tremble before it. And you can just sort of play with the colors. I think if it's a blue light, it should make it a more blue glow, and you can just sort of do that. And there's a lot of layers you can play with. You can look them up online. There's definitely tutorials going over what those layers do, but now you have this magnificent magma fish. And let's say you're done with this image and you want the guy to actually make the fish into one whole thing, because right now if I transform, the fish is all separated. It's like, oh, why isn't it all together? So what you can do is select all the parts of the fish just by clicking the bottom one, holding shift, clicking to the top, and right click and merge the layers. So right now, boom, the fish all together. But since we were covering up a previous fish, we're sort of just going to want to keep it where we found it, just for convenience sake. But let's say you wanted to make a cutout of something. You can easily do that now, because you can just cut it out. Simple stuff. And also what you're going to want to worry about is, I think something happened there. It's, yeah, right, with the fins, not exactly sure, but it's just something with merging layers. Oh, right, because the fins were untouched and just masked by the color layer we actually did right here. So we're going to want to be careful about that. So again, it's about managing your layers if you're going to want to start editing the photos. So right now you could, let's say I was talking about making it more blue and make it seem at night. You're going to want to go to multiply, have your blue selected, and just sort of have that effect. Select all around it, and maybe lower the opacity. Remember, that just changes its intensity. And you can erase still around the fish, which is going to make him stand out even more. And now it looks like he found the holy fish, the holy fish baguette. It's quite the magnificent fish if you think about it. I really do love it. Ah, right. Alright, so as you can see here, with all these layers and different things you can do with them, making adjustments, changing contrast, levels, like, I didn't even get into this, but you can do a lot with the levels. Look at that. It's basically a Star Trek movie. Like, all those lens flares, it's beautiful. But you could really make all you want, and there's a ginormous set of tools, but I'm just here to teach you the basics of how to make things very simple but really effective. And here I think I captured that. And finally, I think everything needs to have a mustache. You might not understand what I mean now, but just go to your select to your brush tool, go to a new layer, because you don't want to mess up your original creation. Zoom right in on the face you're dealing with. You know, if you have a yearbook, you understand, or any textbook with historical figures. You just go here, select a black color with the menu that pops up down there, select. You're going to want to press your brush, just, now it's a villain. Now he's like hunting for the very cool, the fish of the sea, the glowing fish of the sea. He's a pirate now. Yeah, so let's see. I'm not sure how eye patches work. Let's just make it like the 21st century, you know? It's a headband eye patch. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. All right. So now, ooh, looking very intimidating. Maybe gonna. Oh no, I don't want to undo that. So we're gonna go zoom out. Let's see what we have. You know what? It's beautiful. Thank you for listening to my tutorial. I hope you had fun. I know I had fun. And have a good day. Peace.